everybody doing today in this wonderful paradise of Maui? Yeah, glad to be here. My name is Mark Ryan, and I'm gonna be the one to introduce Joe Vitale and Dr. Len, and I'm gonna talk to you, ramble on here for a little bit. Those of you that know me, I have a tendency to be a little hypnotic and go all over the place, and when I'm talking, I'll do my best to keep it fairly linear here. Last night, my girlfriend Kathy was asking me a question about looking around at all the beautiful people that were here and the great event of the luau for those of you that were here. And she asked me, she says, do you realize that if you hadn't introduced Joe to this, that all these people wouldn't be together? And, there's part of us sometimes that wants to push things away and not accept it. And that part was going on, and I was like, well, maybe yes, maybe no. This might have happened anyways and probably would happen, because to me it's about the energy, what Ho'oponopono is doing, what the divinity is doing, and it's that process that the divinity does through us brings us here together. And so whether it was me introducing Joe to it or somebody else, it was meant to happen. And the other thing I got thinking was, what if everybody in this room made this happen? What if all of you individually made this happen and caused me to be introduced to Ho'oponopono and then introduce it to Joe so we could all be here today and then take it out into your lives? How much farther can that go? And what's going to happen after this event? Hi, come on in. So I will start off back. On the way we were flying out here, there was a young lady back of us that lives on Maui, basically lives out of her vehicle and has some pets with her, and she started talking about the volcanoes in Hawaii. Had started going off last week, I think, again, some of the volcanoes, and they were flowing red rivers of lava. And it brought me back to a memory when I was a kid, and I remember reading this book as a child, and it had this lava flow on it, and it had a lot of green, plush green, and then had houses that the lava was coming close to. And this book was about this young man that lived on the big island of Hawaii, and what it was like to live close to a volcano and be around a volcano with the fear of the lava coming towards the house. And a lot of times when a volcano goes off, it gives a foreshadowing that it's going to go off. It'll give rumbles. It'll give a little bit of smoke going up in the air. People know the lava dome will start coming up. People know that this lava, it gives a foreshadowing. And I think what happened with me, what's happened through me throughout my life, and as we talked to Joe and Dr. Len and yourselves, there's foreshadowings of things. Things that you can look back in your past and say, were these little signs, were these little foreshadowings of what's happening now, what's to come? Excuse me. When I was in the military, I met a friend of mine. He was a roommate of mine when I was in Germany, and he was a Hawaiian, and his name was Howard Salmo, a good friend of mine that I'm getting ready to go see on Monday. And it's been 30 years since I've seen him, but he was just an amazing individual, and he taught me a lot about spirituality, and he would talk about some of the spiritual traditions of Hawaii and what went on here, and what some of the kahunas and the different healing techniques, and how the language is really a healing language, and the language is meant to bring positive things into your life and to bring healing into your life. And I'm probably not explaining it as well as Dr. Len could or Howard could, but it was a magic. And he would try to explain a lot of this to me and tell me some of the miracles and things that would happen. I wasn't ready for it at like 17, 18 years old, but it was a foreshadowing. It was kind of a rumbling of what was to come, even to the fact of Hawaii Five-0, watching Hawaii Five-0. I used to love that program and be really drawn to the island of Hawaii and what was going on and the people and the culture that were there. Excuse me. I got a little bit of a cold and flu that I'm still cleaning on here. Then when I started getting to NLP and training with that, some of my teachers that I really started training with, they had also lived on the island of Hawaii and Maui and different places throughout and studied some of these ancient techniques, and they had come up with a process that was their own version of the Ho'oponopono that they had been taught. So again, it was a foreshadowing of what was to come. It was a different yet similar type of Ho'oponopono than you're going to learn over this weekend at the Zero Limit Seminar. And many, many, many of those things have happened as a foreshadowing of this event. when I was in Mount Shasta, there's a lot of synchronicities that happen. I used to go there every year for about 17 years. I had a little booth there and started selling sunglasses there and did very, very well. And so I would drive from upstate New York every year, every summer, to Mount Shasta like a pilgrimage. And the synchronicities that brought me there, all the things that happened along the way. And I have a good friend of mine, his name is Obi Newman, and new man, Obi, new man. So I'm always saying, you know, Obi, a new man, which he always is. He came up to me one day and he says, you know, for some reason, I feel like I have to give this to you. And it was a pamphlet folded up with one of our other friends' name tag on it. And he goes, it's just, I think you're going to be interested in this. And it had blue lettering all over it, like a purplish blue lettering. And I say, okay, I'll take a look at this. And they had gone and seen Dr. Len for an introductory session. I think it was on a Friday before that. I went through, I read it, and it blew me away. And the great thing was, like, I got it. And again, let's go back to foreshadowing. Dr. Vitale recently had his book, Adventures Within, which is a personal tale about his spiritual growth and what had happened to him along the way. I had recently read that book, and in that book, it talked about the Book of Est from Warner Earhart and how much he liked it and enjoyed it. So I went out and got the book. It took a long time for me to get it because all the libraries didn't have it anymore, and they couldn't figure out. They're like, we don't know why people are taking this book. Well, I went to eBay and found out there's $95 because they're not printing it anymore, so I knew what all the college students were doing with the books to make a little bit extra money, and finally got one, a special edition with a credit card from Cornell University, and read it. And that book talked about being responsible. One of the chapters of it was being responsible for your world 100%. And I had to keep reading it over and over again. It was a simple concept, but it wasn't clicking in my head. I just couldn't get it. But yet something inside of me, that foreshadowing, knew it was powerful. It was really powerful. So I kept reading it, and then one day it was like, oh, I got it. I got it. And then it wasn't too long after that I went out to Mount Shasta and got this little pamphlet that talked about 100% responsibility. And I think it was an article from the Seattle Times. It was a New Times magazine or something where Dr. Len had done an interview, and I got it. It made sense. All the stuff that, and it was a similar type of foreshadowing that was recognizable within me. And that process there, through reading it and getting excited about it, I knew that there was going to be something happening with it. It was something big. A lot of times I talk to Joe and I get these intuitions and I say, I don't know what it is, but they come in these packets and it's like everything is there with it. And I know what's going to happen with it, but not necessarily how it's going to unfold. And soon after that, it was about a month later, I think Dr. Vitale had asked me if I would help volunteer with booths because I had been doing the sunglasses. I knew how to run booths. And he asked me if I would go up to the NGH, which is the National Guild of Hypnotherapists up in, I think it was New Hampshire at that time, Nashua, New Hampshire. And I was fresh off of this experience of reading his book and then getting the pamphlet and reading the pamphlet and getting it and understanding it. And there was something in the foreshadowing, because he resides in that same place within me, of that same energy. When I met Joe years ago, that same type of thing happens. Like, this guy's going to be my friend. I don't know why I know this, but I know this. He's going to be a good friend. So it was a foreshadowing that was in that same area. So Joe was kind of on the cusp with his spiritual marketing book and doing all the marketing of that spirituality. But I knew from Adventures Within that if he got this concept, that it would change the world. There was something about it. Again, my girlfriend asked me, she goes, did you realize what would happen with this once you told Joe? And I'm like, yeah, I realized that if I could get him to get it and understand it, I knew what was going to happen. I knew what was possible if Joe understood this and what he could do with it. So the first year I went to the NGH and was talking to Joe, I was like, how do I bring this up with him? And I started talking to him. I asked him, I said, have you heard about this therapist, this doctor, psychiatrist in Hawaii that never saw any patients? I mean, took on a patient. I guess, Dr. Len saw him walking around looking at him in the court, but healed them. And basically the hospital had to close down, which Joe will tell you more about and Dr. Len will tell you about. I said, did you hear about this guy? And all he did was pray over him. Basically say the Ho'oponopono exercise that you're here to learn. And he kind of looked at me funny. And I told, because he knew I'd just come from Mount Shasta. He says, what happened to you out there in Mount Shasta? That's kind of like a little weird what you're talking about. And I said, no, it's great. Anyways, he never really took on at that year, which is about 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago. And we did the booth, sold real well. He goes, man, he says, we really did good. It was energetic. Narissa was there. Joe was up there. I was there. Telman Knudsen, I think, was there. So we did very, very well with this seminar, or selling his products at the booth, and asked me if I'd come again next year. And I said, absolutely. So a year went by, and this time I came to the seminar, started right away, the first day. And poor Narissa, we were setting up, and Narissa was in the back of the room. And I asked her, I said, do you ever check into that therapist that I was telling you about, the guy that could heal just by doing this Ho'opono process? He goes, something's been getting me about that. He goes, tell me more. And I started telling him more, and he'll tell you about it. And he got excited, really excited, and said, Narissa, do you mind watching the room? Now, this is first thing. It's starting, and thousands of people that are going to rush Narissa, and me and Joe are leaving to go get on the internet to check out stuff about Dr. Len. So once he did that, I knew it had taken, that the same thing that had taken inside of me had taken inside of him. So then it was up to me to support Joe in whatever way I could with this knowledge. When I first saw the picture of Dr. Len in that little article, he reminded me of my friend Howard, who I'm going to see, and in Hawaii. And those volcanoes, he has a place that's right by those volcanoes. Pahala is the name of it. And he's got a house there, and I'm going to see him first time in 30 years. And his house is close to these new volcanoes that are going off. So I start to see, again, the foreshadowing of what's happening there. But he had, even though he was a couple years older than me, he had kind of a old wisdom to him. And it was like a grandfatherly, wise type of a wisdom to him. I always looked up to him, even though he was a couple years older. When I saw that picture of Dr. Len in that, I got the same thing. I said, something's here. Even though he's still a young man, I had that grandfatherly, fatherly type of, I was like, wow, it added to it, again, a foreshadowing. Same thing I had with Dr. Joe Vitale when I first met him. So without further ado, I want to introduce these two great men that hold a special place in my heart, and I want to let you all know that it's a simple idea that's very complex. And the complex part of it is understanding the simplicity of it. It's simple, it's easy, but yet there's a lot of stuff in the way to seeing that simplicity. But if you'll trust that place in your heart, and you'll trust Dr. Joe and Dr. Len, I think they're going to resonate with something inside of you. I know they'll resonate with something inside of you that will absolutely change your life and what you do in life. So without further ado, Dr. Joe Vitale, Dr. Len.
Thank you. I love you. Excellent. Good morning. I met almost everybody last night, and you all seem to be incredibly excited. I want to know why. What do you think you're going to get? Really, anybody? What do you think you're going to get? What are you excited about? Something that's going to change your life. More clearing. Somebody else. What are you doing here then? We got it already, she said. What are we doing here then? We're sharing the love and the energy. We're networking with the big guy. But she pointed upstairs. We're networking with the big guy. That's excellent. That's excellent. I'll tell you what I think's going on. First of all, I got no agenda. He has no agenda. I have no notes. He has no notes. We have no outline. We have no PowerPoint. He has no outline. He has no PowerPoint. I think that we want to go here. And this, to me, I end up calling the whiteboard. The whiteboard can be called zero. The whiteboard can be called God. The whiteboard can be called life. But as soon as you call the whiteboard anything, including the whiteboard, you're one step removed away from it. I think we want to be at zero. We want to be at the place of zero limits. And anything we say about what we'd like to get out of it, anything we say about what we would like to do, anything we say about what this is, anything we say about the beliefs and limitations is all our garbage that we've written on the whiteboard. Now, Mark gave you this wonderful introduction, and it is true. He told me that wild story about this therapist that worked for the mental hospital for the criminally insane, who somehow did not work one-on-one with people. He saw them in the halls, but somehow managed to heal them. I found that man. I interviewed him on the phone at first, and he told me his name, Dr. E. Haleakala Hu Lin. And he said, call me E for short. I said, thank you. I needed that break. So I talked to E and I asked him, is it true that you worked at the mental hospital? Yes. Is it true that you didn't see patients? He said, not professionally. I saw them in the hall. Is it true you helped heal them? He said, yes. And I said, what did you do? I was profoundly curious. He said, all I did was clear and clean myself. What does that mean? I clear and clean myself and mentally ill criminals get better? It did not compute. So he said, my whole job here, and he meant my whole job on earth, but he was also talking my whole job there at the hospital is to clean. Explain that to me. He was very patient. He took 45 minutes with me. He did not know me. He had no idea who I was. He never knew that we would ever meet. He never knew that there would ever be a book. He had no idea we'd ever do seminars together. He was just being open-hearted with me. The divine said, answer the phone. I called. He answered the phone. He answered my questions. What he explained is he would look at patients' charts. Can I pick this up for a second? You can imagine that this is a medical chart. And so he would look at the patient's chart. And he would see that they were a murderer, they were a rapist, they had done something pretty dastardly, they were mentally ill criminals who had been confined in a mental hospital, an institution. And as he looked at it, he noticed what he felt within himself, which could have been anger, which could have been resentment, which could have been rage, which could have been bitterness, any number of things. Whatever he felt in himself is what he tried to erase. This is what he meant by clearing. He wasn't trying to clear you. He wasn't trying to clear the patient. He was trying to clear what he noticed within himself that participated in the creation of the patient. I didn't understand. I didn't get it. And I said, okay, how did you co-create them? How did you participate in the creation of a mentally ill criminal who you didn't know anything about and knew no history of, that you didn't know anything about until they got to the hospital? And then he said the most mind-stretching thing that still boggles my mind. And when we talk about complete responsibility, this has taken it to a level that nobody outside of this room, unless they've read Zero Limits or done a workshop with him, have ever considered. And that's the idea that most of you have heard, that you create your own reality. I see some heads nodding. In Dr. Len's world, and it's actually Dr. Hu Len. I've shortened it from E to Dr. Len, but it's actually Dr. Hu Len, if you want to say his name correctly. In Dr. Hu Len's world, he says, if you create your own reality and somebody shows up in your reality that happens to be a mentally ill criminal, you created them too. You create your own reality. They're in your reality. This is 100% responsibility to a degree that almost nobody hears about, let alone entertains or tries to live. So I did find him. I did do that interview with him. I did do a seminar. In fact, Mark Ryan and I did the seminar, the first one, together. And I did several seminars with him. I also brought him to Austin, where Suzanne and I had set up this dinner party. We thought 5 people might show up. We had like 75 people who showed up. They were just drawn to this whole idea. And then, of course, we did a preliminary Zero Limit seminar about a year ago in Austin. Didn't advertise it. I just wanted to see if Dr. Hu Len and I danced well together. And we danced remarkably well together, letting the divine play the music. So he has agreed to come and do another workshop for today and tomorrow. When I say workshop, that's not making any sense to me. It needs to be called something else. It's not really a workshop. It's not really a play shop. It's not really a seminar. It's some sort of experiential, some sort of splash of the divine. And it is all driven by inspiration. as you'll be learning that you have a choice. Your choice is to come from inspiration or to come from memory in each moment. And virtually all of us are coming from memory. We're coming from something we've done before. We're coming from past programming. That's what we want to clean. That's what we want to erase. And as you erase that, you start coming from inspiration. And where does inspiration come from? The whiteboard or the blackboard. It comes from here. It's inspired. It just kind of bubbles up. And throughout the weekend, if it occurs to me, I'll tell you various stories about how that's bubbled up for me, how inspiration has just kind of showed up. And I say when inspiration shows up, your part of the deal is to take action. And then if you're actually clear, you'll automatically take action. That if you get an inspiration and you don't take action, it's because there's some sort of memory there that's causing you to not move forward. So, hopefully you're all delightfully confused. And that's a wonderful place to be. Confusion is that wonderful state before clarity. So, it is a great pleasure, a great honor to bring up here somebody who has deeply influenced my life, somebody who is a co-author for one of the most important books I've written, Zero Limits, the man of the moment, Dr. Hulin. Is your mic on? I'm going to make sure you're on. Say something.
I thought he was going to say the man of La Mancha. You know? I'm going to open with a greeting in Hawaiian, and the purpose is to, if you brought in any garbage into the room, we want to take that back to zero. Yeah. Pua maya maya kapo iloko, akam lama lama, vau no kaha, kaumale ola. O wao no ka poho, ke ka ele mamawaho a ino ke au pao. Ka I, ke kino iho na me au pao. Ka iau I ku u pi o na nui nui, mawaho a ino kai au pao. Ka ho o mao mao o mananao, a me na me au pao. O wao no ka ho, a me ka ha, he huna kamakani, nahi nahi, ka hua huna, o kumalipo, o wao no ka I am the I. I come forth from the void into light. I am the breath that nurtures life. I am that emptiness, that hollowness beyond all consciousness, the I, the id, the all. I draw my bow of rainbows across the waters, the continuum of minds with matters. I am the incoming and the outgoing of breath. The invisible, untouchable breeze, the undefinable atom of creation. I am the I. I was in North Carolina doing a class, and somebody sent me or gave me there, if I can find it. Somebody sent me a cartoon, and I think it's important to share it with you, just to make sure we're getting clear as to what I'm talking about. So the cartoon is called Cornered, and it's in a bookstore. It could be in Borders or doesn't matter. So there's a sign that says self-help, and there's only one fellow under there. And then there's another sign that says fixing others. Yeah. So most of us spend most of our lives fixing others. And if you really pay attention, you will notice it never works. Now, if you're a physician, you think it works, it never works. For example, in this great country of ours, by the time a cardiologist is 60 years old, he has a higher incidence of heart problems than the general population. So some of you who, Joe said I could say anything, so I'm going to say it. So some of you who are, quote, healers, I'm going to talk to you today particularly, because it's important for you to know what's going on in you. So I'm going to pose 5 questions today. I'm going to kind of address myself to it, and maybe I won't. Maybe it'll show up. Who knows? Yeah. So the first question I'm going to address myself to is a question that probably not too many people walking the earth can answer clearly. Clearly. And the question is, who am I? Who am I? As you know, the great philosopher Socrates says, know thyself. And most people have no idea who they are. And I suspect some of you don't either. So I'm going to go over this today or tomorrow, and Joe will give you some stories, and maybe some of you will have some stories. But who am I? And as Shakespeare said, to thine own self be true. But most of us are not. Moment by moment, we're somewhere else, and we're not ourselves. So it's going to be very important to at least kind of address ourselves to this. And then the other question I'm going to ask is, what is a problem? And most people have no idea what this is. And if you look at the health system today, it's going crazy, because nobody in the health system has answered the question, what is a problem? Yeah? So it's very important to work with that and be very clear, because if you're not clear, you're going to be like a rubber ball bouncing all over the place and causing problems for everybody else. Then the third question, I think, is very important, and it's the question of 100% responsibility, is the question of where is the problem? Where is the problem? And this question deals with being 100% responsible. And as I say, kind of every class that I've ever given for the 25 years, the point always comes up, have you ever noticed that every time there's a problem, you are always there? Yeah. I mean, you are always there. Always. There's no exception. So we're going to look at where is the problem, because if you're not clear where the problem is, then too bad for the rest of us. Yeah? Because as you get clear as to who you are, what is the problem, where the problem is, the rest of us will be fine. Really. But as long as you can't answer any of this, the rest of us will be in hell, and you will be the creator now. Yeah? So it's very important. And then the question is, how can the problem be solved? How can the problem be solved? But how can we solve a problem when we don't even know what the problem is? How can we solve a problem when we don't even know where it is? Truly, we have no idea. So I'm going to deal with this, and this 3 and 4 deal with being 100% responsible. It's very, very, very important to be 100% responsible. And then the 5th question, which I've just thrown in since Japan. I came back from Japan, did a class there last weekend. The question is what is the purpose of existence? What is the purpose of existence? And nobody knows. Because if you knew, you wouldn't be here. Really, you would not be here. If you knew what a problem was, you would not be here. You would be wasting your time. Wasting it. You could be walking the beaches of Maui, or go up to the place where I live on the Big Island, volcano, 5 miles from an active volcano, and any moment you go, and you're gone. You know? But since I live part of the year in California, Woodland Hills, you could go, be gone too. Here's what I'm going to, Joe and I and whoever, I don't know where it's going to go. I don't care where it's